Hey everyone, welcome to r/Tales from Tech Support, where we get to have a little chuckle at the technologically disadvantaged. Like me. I'm Uncle Reddit, and have I got a story for you. If it was that easy, we'd do it ourselves. This is a story from the time when I was a consultant. I called myself a security consultant, but because the sales team knew nothing about security, I got sold for any job from tech support to high-class security design. The year is 2000. The customer is a small private bank. The sales team qualified the job as a firewall configuration on a Sun server. Persons: customer, the team leader for the customer's ops team, and me, the freshly minted checkpoint firewall specialist. Arrival at the customer's site in the middle of Frankfurt, Germany at 9 a.m. Shiny-eyed and bushy-tailed. I get shown into the basement and led to a Sun 5 pizza box that shows 4 network cables connected to it. All LEDs are blinking continuously. Customer: this is the firewall to our home banking site. We'd like you to make a copy of it for redundancy purposes. Me: no problem. If you give me the root password, I'll be done tonight. Customer: well, if it was that easy, we'd do it ourselves. The former firewall admin left 18 months ago and forgot to leave the credentials. We didn't notice until lately, but now we'd like to have a redundant firewall. Me: okay, plan B. We schedule a downtime tonight at 2 a.m. and boot the firewall from CD, change the root password, and make a copy tomorrow. Customer: we had that idea as well, but the documentation shows that there's a boot password, which we don't know as well. This can be a plan Z for the last resort. We already have organized an unprotected boot ROM to exchange it with the current one, but until then you need to do it differently. Me: you want me to hack into the firewall server? Customer: no, you'd probably break something, and because we don't have a copy of this firewall, you're not allowed to touch it until you made a copy. Me, with a sinking feeling: alright, what's the plan then? Customer: as you might have noticed, there are port replicators on all 4 Ethernet cables going in and out of the firewall. Your job for the next 2 weeks is to deduce the current firewall rules from listening to the traffic on all ends of the firewall and recreate the rule set out of that. We have a lab for you. I get shown into a huge loading bay. It's completely empty but for a big conference table stacked with Sun pizza boxes, network cables, and a single chair. 4 suspicious network cables are leading out of a vent hole to the table. At lunchtime, I had a basic listening setup completed. A server with a 4-port network card, TCP dump running on all 4 ports, and writing logs with miscellaneous timestamps. Later in the afternoon, I had another shell job finished, sorting the separate logs into a single log that showed the flow of traffic through the firewall. I was lucky in that the firewall itself was something called portcullis. The rule set existed as text file only, and the firewall software was mainly written in Perl. So I wrote myself another Perl script which parsed the logs into my TCP dumps, created and wrote firewall rules as output. The next week was spent making sure my scripts kept running, and mainly reading the newest Harry Potter novel out that week. Finally, the output rule set was beautified by me and loaded onto a freshly installed, all credentials documented firewall, which was put on top of the current one. The customer unceremoniously switched the network cables from the current pizza box over to the new one, and everything worked. To my inner amazement, outward, I kept my cool. Another happy customer who immediately booked me for a follow-up job of a much higher magnitude, but that's another story. Yeah, I guess I don't know enough about networks to understand that whole thing, why they wouldn't just let him crack through the firewall. But hey, he knew enough to get the job done, so kudos to him. How a hollow point solved the problem when a manager uses cowboy law to get a new server. Hey there, long-time reader, first-time poster. On mobile, so apologies and all that. So I work for a company that supplies point-of-sale hardware, software, networks, the works, to grocery stores all over the Americas. I've been here for just under a decade, and boy do I love my job. I'm on the support side of the house, essentially the warranty. This story happened fairly early on. We had this one customer, a small-time independent grocery store chain with maybe 3 stores and a tight budget. They were on a contract that didn't include upgrades to their hardware and were still rocking Windows XP servers, with at most 2 gigabytes of RAM. We had been having issues on the regular with one store where their poor little engine that almost could would lock up running batches on their inventory for price management, and the manager was proper fed up with the situation. His main file server would lock up. He would call us. We would band-aid it and recommend to the owners of the company that they needed to have a beefier boy installed. They would deny every time. So after about day umpteen-million-and-three of this repeat issue, and the manager begging both us and his bosses for a hardware upgrade, I get an automated alert that his server was offline again. Well, he's probably just rebooting it because it's frozen, I think. Boy, was I wrong. I call the store and the manager answers with an audible grin so wide I can practically get a tan from all that radiating smugness. Me: "Hey manager, this is OP from company. I'm calling because your server is showing offline for us again. Do you have a few minutes?" Manager: "Oh buddy, I'm glad you called. You're going to have to schedule a tech out here to get this server replaced." Me: "Well, we need owner approval for that, but if you could just..." Manager: "Emergencies are covered under contract, right?" Me: Yes sir." Manager: "And I can assure you that nothing you or I can do from where we're at will get this server back online. So this is an emergency, correct?" Me: "Fair enough, sir. I'll get someone out there ASAP." So I dispatched a tech, and as luck would have it, he was already in the area, just coming off working on another store. I get him to go take a look, and he calls me about an hour later. Tech, asking for me specifically. "Hey OP, can you schedule another dispatch for this store emergency to get their new server authorized?" Me: "Yeah, I can start the process, but you know how these owners have been about buying new hardware." Tech: "Yeah, that's not going to be a problem this time." Me: "What happened? Can we try to get the server back online?" Tech: "That's not going to happen there, bud. Calling it catastrophic hardware failure over here. I'll send you a pic." The tech sent my work email a picture, and what I saw was a computer case that had a little hole in one side and a substantially larger hole in the other side. Opened up, the case revealed a penetrated hard drive and a shredded motherboard. Manager got his new computer. Oh my god. I could just imagine getting to that point where, you know what, just put it out of its misery. I seem to remember a story from when I was a kid about Richard Pryor had a car and it broke down on the side of the road and he had enough, so he pulled out his pistol and shot the engine with his pistol. I'd like to have seen that. Call before you dig. I'm working for a strange consulting firm that still isn't sure what to do with me, but the pay's good. After the previous gig, I'm told to get myself to a suburban office park somewhere in Missouri and join an existing engagement with Amalgamated Pipelines, AP. It's late spring, so business travel becomes an excuse to ride my motorcycle. A day and a half later, I'm at my second home, a mid-grade hotel chain with the amenities I want. Room service, a small hotel bar with a familiar point-of-sale system. I check in, clean up, park myself at the bar, which is sparsely occupied. I drop my laptop at the bar and start reading through the documents from the client as well as previous emails. Looks like the Amalgamated has decided to assess and fix their cybersecurity in a few weeks, like cleaning up from a week-long house party 15 minutes before mom and dad come home. I've been tasked with writing an entire policy kit this week. There's an external team doing some kind of vulnerability scan, but I'm not involved. My firm is also doing some consulting around restructuring financial stuff, but I skip over those threads. I find the docs I'm interested in, network and infrastructure. The regular IT network looks like late 90s state-of-the-art MPLS WANs between offices. The industrial control system, ICS, networks are much less detailed. The top-level diagram of the whole network looks like marketing material. It's not a hastily pushed-together Visio doc, but without specifics. There's some spreadsheet as an inventory, devices and locations, and 172.16xx addresses. Okay, I do notice that they're handed over nothing for the usual policies and procedures. I'll just buy one of those off-the-shelf policy kits and get AP to let me know what they don't, can't, or won't do. It's imperfect, but that's what you get when you only have a week. A few more people find their way to the hotel bar, and we're all living the same life. Laptops and drinks. I notice one laptop across the bar from me with a variety of hacker conference stickers. The owner is a 30-something woman picking at a plate of fries and pipetting drops of water into a glass of scotch while staring at her screen. I go back to my room and slap together some slides describing my part of this project for tomorrow's kickoff and go to bed. The next morning, I boil water with the in-room coffee maker to make oatmeal, and make it to Amalgamated's offices. I get to meet the teams. My firm has a handful of management consultants, but I'm the only IT or security consultant. There's another firm doing a pen test. After the initial kickoff meeting, I'll get to try to coordinate with the handful of people I need to talk to. I'd expect to overlap with the pen test team to save time. Right as the meeting starts, I see the scotch drinking woman from the bar and her bestickered laptop. There are intros and a lot of backstory about Amalgamated. I really don't care, but I want to look attentive and easy to work with. After the meeting, I meet Ralph, Amalgamated's director of IT. He wants to make sure I get settled in. I follow him through a maze of mouse-colored cubicles. I think I'm in a sales or customer service phone bank as the people around me are busy taking short phone calls. Ralph has a neutral American accent, which makes me guess he's either from Central Ohio or he's suppressing a thicker accent. This distracts me. I want to force him to say to be or needs done and solve this mystery. After some chit-chat in his office, we agree on the plan. I'm going to give him parts of the generic policy and he'll assign Amalgamated staff to make comments. Once we collect all their inputs, I'll edit the policies and they can sign off on them. The next week will be spent poking people, fighting over wording and writing. Policy writing ain't easy, but it's necessary. I'll be chasing stakeholders like Tom chased Jerry. The first day, it's sending emails and editing the policy template. I'm mostly changing names, titles, and commenting out things Amalgamated doesn't handle, like credit cards or healthcare data. This isn't complicated work, so I get to take in my surroundings. Most of the people at Amalgamated have worked here for years. Their cubes are decorated with plaques showing how long they've been there. During coffee breaks, I wander around to see many 5- and 10-year plaques of different colors. I'll have to ask Ralph when I talk to him next. Most of the office empties out at 4:55, but one woman in a cube near me sticks around. I try listening into her calls. Maybe she's renting real estate on the side. Her calls start out with narrowing down a particular property and then telling them either you're okay or we'll be out there within 48 hours. Don't do any work in the area until we're there. Fine, I've done my day's work, so I leave Amalgamated. The parking lot's empty, so I deliberately ride over the speed bumps fast enough to catch air. Simple pleasures, like a dinner at Waffle House and a book. I ride back to the hotel and park myself in the bar to have a drink and catch up on other work. After a beer or two and some timesheets, I notice scotch and water at the bar. I wave to her and manage a brief conversation. Me. Hey, I saw you at the kickoff looking at your stickers. You're on the pen test? Scotch and water. I'm leading it. The rest of my team's offshore. Me. Great, I'm writing policies this week. Did you get any details on our ICS systems? All I saw was marketing material. Scotch and water. Air-gapped. Me. I'd like to believe that, but I'd like to believe a lot of things that aren't true. Scotch and water with a bored face. So neither of us know anything. I've got stuff to do. I leave her be, finish my drink, and go up to my room. Oddly enough, I've already received some comments on my drafts. Most of them are the usual changes for people's titles, nitpicky comments on wording, and the odd one. In the network security policy, there was a section that read like it was from the early 90s. Dial-up systems. Any system with a dial-up connection shall use a unique password before being connected to the telephone network. I figured this wasn't relevant, so I commented with a terse, I'm pretty sure you're not using dial-up anymore, so I'd suggest removing this or limiting it to fax/multifunction printers. This seems to be a controversial topic. This has sparked an entire back and forth between a few Amalgamated staff, which comes to a conclusion that the Industrial Control Systems team can't meet this for all their dial-up systems and that it's overly burdensome to fix. This keeps me up at night. What sort of stuff do they have on dial-up? The next morning I get my coffee and park myself in my cubicle. Before the calls start, I poke my head over the cubicle wall and introduce myself to my office neighbor. Me. Hi there. I'm just a contractor working with you all. What are you all doing? My neighbor looks at me and cocks her head to the side, like I asked a really dumb question. Neighbor. We're the call before you dig hotline. Me. Huh? Neighbor. We've got maps of all of our buried assets. When someone wants to dig, they call us and we let them know if we need to mark the property. She points at a map of what looks like the western half of Missouri. Neighbor. I'm responsible for the Morala corridor. Candy, next cube over, is responsible for Texas and New Mexico. I look at the map on her cubicle and see lines crossing Missouri, Arkansas, and Louisiana. There are details as well. I see components of the pipelines and other details in small print. I hear a voice booming behind me. It comes from a large bearded man who consciously flexes his muscles. I know he has an axe. I just hope it isn't in his office. I call him Tormund. Tormund. You law techie? Me. I am. What do you need? Tormund. I need you to be more reasonable with your policies. Me. I'd like to think I'm reasonable, but how can I be more so? Tormund. Unique passwords are too hard to manage. Our systems aren't connected to the internet, so it doesn't matter. I also want the air gap testing requirement out of the policy. Me. Is this for your ICS network? Tormund. Yes, I'm a manager in the Industrial Controls Department. Me. I saw your comments. Tormund. What's that supposed to mean? I'm imagining what's going on in his head. It's not pretty. I put my hands up. Me. You say your systems are air-gapped, but won't test to make sure. Tormund's nostrils flare. If you can't read the diagram we sent you, we should replace you with someone who can. Me. Look, I'll figure out who can sign off on this. I'll let you know. Tormund grunts and walks off. This is going to be fun. Thankfully, the rest of the day is filled with less threatening meetings, comments on documents, and listening into the call before you dig calls. One caller seems to be a bit demanding. This reminds me of my help desk days. I can't hear the caller, but I can hear Candy's voice. Sir, I understand that it's your land. We bought the rights to have a pipeline there. Sir, you cannot dig in that area. It's not safe. You're right. We can't stop you from digging there. Let me assure you, if you dig through our 12-inch pipeline, damage to your auger is the least of your worries. We all have a laugh at this. Candy seems to have calmed down her angry Texan. Everybody filters out by 5, but I'm still waiting on some edits before I leave. I take the opportunity to walk through the cube maze. I stop at Candy's cube and look at her map to get an idea how these pipelines work. Pipelines are layered networks. At the bottom of their OSI model, there are long tubes filled with petroleum products. On top of them are thin electrical networks to power pumps, sensors, and valves, and their controllers. On top of that, there's a conventional network controlling all this. That network runs back to control buildings. All this makes sense to me. There are faint notes on the map as well. I note many of the controllers have 4 or 10-digit numbers faintly written next to them. I look around, then take a few pictures with my phone. My phone buzzes. It's a demanding email from the Director of Industrial Controls, who I assume is Tormund's boss. Since their systems are air-gapped, they feel that it's absolutely ridiculous that they should have to meet unreasonable standards, let alone let those standards be written down in a policy document. More than a few people at my firm are CC'd. I've had enough for the day. I go back to the hotel, change, and try to find decent barbecue. Sadly, all I can find is bandanas, which will have to suffice. As I see it, I'm either going to have to go to my boss and get some cover or capitulate to the ICS wildlings. I plead with the waitress to bring me a plain seltzer, even trying to explain that the little switch on the side of the dispenser can be used to make this. She brings me a Sprite and I'm sad. I'm mashing at my phone, getting sweet barbecue sauce on the screen when the picture of the map from Candy's cubicle comes up. Out of idleness, I swipe around the map of Texas. I don't know why I wrote down the number written on the map. I really don't know why I decided to call it. It answers after 3 rings. I'm a kid of the 90s. I know what a modem attempting a handshake sounds like. I use a few napkins and a cup of Sprite to wash my hands. I drop more than sufficient money on the table and run out of the restaurant. I pull on my helmet, jacket, and gloves and make good time back to the hotel. I run to my room before taking off my helmet. 15 minutes and $20 later in the hotel's business center, I've printed off Candy's map. I sit at the bar drinking cold seltzer and calling up modems, marking the results on the printout. A few turn out to be actual humans in a port facility or control room. Some guessing later, and I figure out the area codes and exchanges for most of their numbers on the map. I'm practically spinning on my bar stool. I see Scotch and Water walk into the bar. I walk over, to her disappointment. Me, how would you like some high findings on your pen test report? Her annoyance turns into amusement as I walk her through what I found, including dialing one of the modems. She opens her laptop and starts chatting with her team to work out a test plan, then closes her laptop. Scotch and water. Why do you care? Me. I want to write good policy, and I'm going to guess that your team will have a reportable finding that you can tell the client tomorrow. I'm hoping this might make them listen to me. She looks dubious, but buys me sufficient mid-grade booze to let me sleep. The next morning, I send a meeting request to Tormund and his boss to discuss a way forward. That meeting gets accepted, then canceled due to a more pressing security matter. I rewrite the policy requiring unique passwords, validation of air gaps, and failed login detection. I put a comment in the document about how these are reasonable controls in an increasingly dangerous world. Nobody seems to quibble about this. Call before you dig, indeed. Wow, that was a long one. So, I'm gathering that there are some people who are of the mindset that this is the way it's always been done. And then there's some laziness thrown in there for good measure. And then maybe somebody that's budget conscious that doesn't want to change things because, it would cost money to upgrade this stuff. Although I guess if you just did the whole unique password thing, that would help. What do you guys think? Noisy printer. This is from many years ago when I worked in desktop support. Finance department had an old printer that had a history of issues. The latest ticket was from someone complaining of a loud grinding noise. We replaced feeder rollers, fuser, etc., but couldn't fix the issue. Even escalated to an external printer support vendor who also couldn't fix it. Printer still printed, but the noise remains. We replaced it with another and started to cart the old one away when Bob from the department asked if he could keep the printer. I told him it makes a loud noise, but he can keep it if he understands that we can't fix it. I get back to my desk to see a new ticket in my queue from Bob. New printer is making loud noise. I've worked with a ton of people like that. They heard what you said, but they really didn't hear what you said. Well, thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. If you've enjoyed this content, do me a favor. Would you consider giving this video a like, subscribing to the channel, and maybe click the little bell icon so you don't miss the fat guy with the beard telling you stories. See ya.